Welcome to Martin County, Mr. Meehan. I'm Reed. This is Jason, and that's for AJ. Where were you born? Where are you from?
Well, my name is James E. Meehan Jr. I was born in Whitestone, New York in 1944. I moved from there to Mineola, from there to Hicksville. This is all in Long Island. From there to Bayshore. From there I went in the Navy.
When you went to the Navy, what was your specific branch or anything?
Well, when I first went into the Navy, I went to boot camp, and then I went to sub school in New London, Connecticut, and I decided I didn't like that, so I got out of that. And then I went on an aircraft carrier, which is like the complete opposite. And from there, I was given a set of orders to go to Vietnam.
Were you enlisted, or?
I enlisted. All my friends were being drafted into the Army. I figured that it would be better for me to be offshore someplace, lobbing shells in, to be standing behind a tree somewhere. So I joined the Navy, although it didn't work out that way.
How did it work out?
I wound up on a 36-foot river patrol boat in Nha Trang, Vietnam. And we also ran 13.5-foot Boston whalers at night. We ran 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
How many hours did you serve a day? Did you
We
rest?
did 12 and 15-hour patrols.
Did you have a day shift or a night shift?
They rotated. We rotated shifts from one to the other. Most of the Boston whalers ran at night.
All right.
How long were you in?
In the Navy?
Yeah.
9 years, 9 months, and 20 days.
Got that down.
I didn't count them, though.
They got it already preset.
Mm.
That's good.
Were you injured ever?
I wasn't physically injured. I have other problems, but problems that arise later on down the road, 30, 40 years later, problems arise from that. But
Alright.
Did you have any other family members that were part of?
my grandfather was in World War I in France. My father didn't go in. He had too many children. He was too old, had too many children, so they wouldn't take him. It was me. I have 3 older sisters, and I'm the youngest. I'm the only boy, so.
Did you have any kids go into Army?
None of my children went in the service. They spent too much time in the service with me. They didn't want to go through that again.
All right.
You do a lot of traveling.
What was your job to do? What'd you make?
I was an engineer. An engineer is you work on anything mechanical, mostly diesel engines and outboard motors, and so I was called an engineman. I was an engineman second class when I got out.
Did you rank up any higher? How many classes were there? Third class, fourth class?
Well, yeah. Well, you start out at E1, and I was an E5.
Ah.
So.
What were you guys trying to prevent?
We're in Vietnam.
Yeah.
We're trying to prevent any insurgency whatsoever, any contraband being transferred from point A to point B. They might be smuggling Viet Cong in the bottom of their boats when they see us come, and they hide them, or if they had too much food in the boat or too much supplies of anything, we would get suspicious about it, and we'd take them into the local authorities and turn them over to them.
Did that ever happen, when you were
Every
searching? How many cases a day would you say you looked through boats?
Well, every boat was different. Some people they all have identification papers. If you didn't have identification papers, you brought them in. If they had too many cans of, say they had sea rats, those are cans of military food, U.S. military food. If they had those in their boat, well, they had to get them someplace because something wasn't right. So we would take them in and have them inspected and have them checked out.
What were some of their boats that they had?
They all smelled of Nook Bomb. Nook Bomb is a fish oil. Comes in 5-gallon cans, or they cook with it, or they eat it. It's horrible. There was they had roaches in their boats as big as what palmetto bugs are.
Yeah.
They were roaches. You could put saddles on them.
Gee.
You got to climb down in the bowels of the boat and dig through all the stuff that was down there into the bilge and everything, and make sure they didn't have anything that they shouldn't have.
How many boats would you have to check a day?
We checked anywhere from 150 to 225, 250 a day. That's combined, that's all 3 boats or 4 boats working at one time.
Dang. Was there like a percentage of those boats a day that had like stuff that weren't supposed to be on them?
I don't know how you could put it in a percentage, but there was quite a few every day. You always had something to do every day, you know. It was mostly watching, being alert, making sure when you checked the boat, 1 guy would go in the boat, 3 guys would stand behind you with their guns ready in case something happened, because all it would take is one of those guys to pull a pin on a hand grenade and we all be gone.
Did you have them like stand up in a line or something?
No, we just watched them. We weren't too hard pressed on them because we weren't there to make enemies. We were there just to make sure that nobody was smuggling anything.
Yeah.
What would like when they like tried to put like bombs on your boats or anything like that ever?
Yeah, well, they sunk 1 ship in the harbor. It was a Shell tanker. I have the paperwork in here on that. And they sunk one of our, blew up one of our patrol boats. They were unsinkable, but blew the whole side out of it, which I have pictures of also. So
Dang.
it was every day, you had to be alert.
Did any of like the people when you tried to like, go on their boat and inspect, did any of them like resist or what
No.
they do?
We've had people lie to us and tell us they don't have any documents because maybe we caught them before, or maybe somebody was looking for them or whatever, and we'd wind up just taking those in anyway. But we never had too much resistance from the people, the crews of the boats that we were checking. They were pretty happy just to see us leave.
Yeah.
Did you miss your family when you went out?
Yeah, I got sent to Vietnam a week after my first son was born, and I didn't see him till he was 14 months old.
Wow.
And that was tough.
You were like the boat was pretty intimidating on the water, I bet.
Oh yeah, that's why we painted the shark teeth on the front of them. So when you came upon them, they had small boats, we had big boats. So when you came upon, well, they had some big boats too, but when you came upon the little boats, it was really intimidating. They're superstitious people.
How big was some of the like enemy boats, I guess?
They could be 40 to 50 foot long, or they could be 16 foot long.
What kind of boat did you patrol on?
I was on a 36-foot LCPL, which means Landing Craft Personnel Lodge.
What about for some of the little like smaller rivers and stuff? You had
We
to go
used
in?
the Boston Whalers, 13.5-foot Boston Whalers, 45 horse Johnsons on the back, and later on we went to 15-foot Boston Whalers with 85 horse.
What was it like at night going down them rivers, knowing they could hear you and knew you were there?
Quiet. Had to be very quiet. You made as little noise as possible. You didn't really want to be seen.
Did you like put any camo on the boat?
Camo? No, the boats are painted black. And we did have white letters on them, which years later I wondered why that was. But
What kind of guns did you have on the boats?
on the 36 footers, we had 250 caliber machine guns, 1 forward, 1 aft. We had, they were mounted in the cabin. We had 6 M16s. First were AR-15s. We went to M16s. We had 4 Remington short barrel pump shotguns. We had 2 M79 single shot grenade launchers. And we had personal weapons, sidearms. Some people had 45, some people had 38s. And we also had our own 30 caliber M1 carbines. That was on one boat.
Wow. How many guys were on one boat?
And my crew was 5.
5.
On the smaller boats, on the Boston Whaler, they had 130 caliber machine gun mounted. Their sidearms, 45s or whatever they had, and M16s. All boats had lots of percussion grenades. And I think they had 1 M79 in the Boston Whaler.
Did the 50 calibers have complete like rotation, or was it like stoppers? So it couldn't go all the way around?
Rotation 360?
Yeah.
No, they had stops on them so you wouldn't shoot the guy driving a boat.
So you only carried your handgun on you,
When,
mostly?
well, when you went down inside a boat, you carried a 45 usually, and you had 3 guys standing behind you with M16s and the shotgun.
What were some of the dangers you had to deal with going down the rivers and patrolling out in the...
Well, being there was the biggest danger. And then as you went down the river, you had to wonder about, you see all these little tin shacks, cardboard shacks, and you had to wonder who was just going to stick a gun out a window and pop one off at you, you know?
Yeah.
And we've been fired upon. Like, on my first patrol, I went past Premier Key's palace. He was the premier or vice premier of Vietnam at the time. And this is the first day we had the boats, and they didn't know who we were, and we didn't know who they were. And we go past this palace, and they opened up on us. And when we turned around, took the covers off the guns and off the 50s, and opened up on them. And we heard our radio saying, "Ceasefire, ceasefire, friendly fire."
Yeah.
There's no such thing as friendly fire. Bullets kill you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was a mistake, but, you know, mistakes are teaching tools. You learn
Yeah.
who your friends are after that.
Did anyone get like hit with the bullets from that?
We had, I don't think we had any casualties in our outfit at that time, my group, but there was afterwards. We were only there from 1966 to 1971. They pulled us out in the beginning of '72 and turned all the equipment over to the South Vietnamese Navy. But there were like 13 men that got killed in the span of that time, and that I think I told you about, and I can tell you about it again if you like.
Sure.
Each event was separate. I don't really want to get into it, but there was just 13 men were killed in IUWG-1, and I just put it that way. I don't want to get too deep into it. We have a memorial to them in Fort Pierce, Florida, at the UDTC Museum that we're going to dedicate June 13, 2010. We finally took 5 years. We found all the family members of the KIA people, and we invited them down. We're going to have a memorial service.
Did you like meet any new friends or anybody?
Did I make any friends over there?
Yeah.
Yes, I did. And my organization now, I'm president of IUWG1 Veterans Organization and co-founder of that thing. One of my best friends, turns out 40 years later, 35 years later, we met. And I said to him, "Where were you stationed?" He said, "I was in Nha Trang, Vietnam." And I said, "Well, I was in Nha Trang, Vietnam. When were you there?" He says, "I was there in 66 and 67. I said, "Well, I was there in 66 and 67, and I don't remember you." He says, I said, "What boat were you on?" He says, "Well, I was on the 4-4. I said, "No, I was on the 4-4. I know you weren't on the 4-4. He said, "I'm telling you." He named his whole crew. I knew his whole crew. I didn't remember him. And then it was like a week later, we remembered that we ran 2 crews. He was in the other crew. He wasn't in my crew. And we never saw each other because we would tie the boat up. We'd get it all set up to go out again, and we would leave the boat, and there was a guard on the pier, and then they would come down because they weren't like 12 on, 12 off. It was 15 and 12, 12-hour shifts. So we never got to hang out together, and we never got to work together because we worked opposite. We've been friends ever since. About next year, be 10 years. And I also have other friends that I was trained with since then, making this organization and spending all the time on the computer and finding people. There was only 500 of us in the whole course of the war, and we found 350 of us. And we all get together for reunions, different people at different times, depending on where the reunion is in the United States. But it's good to get back with the people you served with. You have a lot of camaraderie.
Yeah.
What were your living conditions like?
Terrible. When we got there, we had no no barracks, no place to live. We had to go down to Camp McDermott, which is called Tent City in the Trang. We lived there, and every day we would come back up. This is before we had the boats. We got there before the boats. We had to come back up to the site, and it was on a hill with a big French fort that we used for the HECP, which is the command post. Harbor Entrance Command Post, HECP stands for. So we'd go up there and clear off all the weeds and the stuff, the woods, and spray it all with what they now call Agent Orange, and kill everything, snakes and weeds, and fill a lot of sandbags and build a lot of buildings. We did most of the building of the barracks and everything ourselves. Well, in the 3 months we were waiting for our boats to come.
Did you have to go and chop down your own trees and stuff?
There was no trees, it was just like underbrush.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was no trees there, but it was on the side of a hill. So you had to make plateaus in order to put the buildings on the plateaus. And then you had to put sandbags along the edge of the thing, because in the monsoon season, it would rain so hard that I wouldn't be able to see you sitting there.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and it did that for a couple months. And you worked in it. You went out on patrol in it. It wasn't, I'm not going out there, it's raining.
Yeah, it's just water. Did you have any, like, while you were not patrolling the waters, like, what'd you do during that time?
On our off time?
Yeah.
Well, in the beginning, we didn't have a beer hall, but we built one. And we used to get beer off the ships. They'd give us cases of beer that would come in because we were going around the ships. We were protecting them. They used to drop us down cases of beer. We used to put those up in the beer hall, and then we'd pay like 15 cents for them or whatever for a beer. And we'd have a couple of beers and let us home and go to bed, because in a couple hours you had to get back up and go back on patrol. We did that 24/7, 7 days a week.
Did you guys, like, play any sports or something?
We had no place to do sports. We had no place. Now, that's where I was at. If you went 40 miles down the coast, Cameron Bay, they had all that stuff. They had running water, paved roads, and all those things. We had nothing. We were like, we were the bottom of the list. When it came to getting anything, we were at the bottom of the list.
Ooh, it's tough.
It was, but you know, you make do.
You said something about bamboo boats earlier?
Oh, boats, the 40-foot boats that are wrapped in bamboo. You had to check every one of those pieces of bamboo to make sure that the ends hadn't been taken out, and they put like hand grenades or bullets or gunpowder or food or whatever. They stuff them full. Bamboo makes the boat lighter, so they can go further up the river. So they're more apt to carry supplies.
How would you check, like, each piece?
You have to go and lean over the side, and you know, when bamboo, it has little compartments, right? You'd have to tap the compartments to make sure that the ends haven't been taken out and put back in. And
Jeez, I bet that was a pain.
yeah, it was fun.
Did you ever find anything in the bamboo?
Yeah, we found occasionally you'd find things, and you have to impound the boat, take the guys, turn them in.
What happened to them after you turned them in? Like,
Well, back then it was just, like I said, we were new. We turned them over to the Nha Trang Police Department or the South Vietnamese Navy there, and whatever they did with them, I don't know, but we'd see them again once in a while. Same guys would pop back up in another boat.
did you like recognize them when you saw
Oh
them?
yeah, I've seen a couple.
What was the most you've ever seen, like a certain guy?
Well, you know, it's not nice to say. They kind of all look alike, you know. They just wear different clothes. But some of them, the older guys, have long beards, and you remember that, you know, long, thin Fu Manchu type beard. You remember that. I saw that guy a lot of times. He tried to tell me one time he was deaf and dumb. I didn't believe it.
How did they, like, get back out there to?
They turn them loose and they just go back wherever they came from and get on another boat. It's you know, it's like, in the beginning it was kind of useless for us to be there, because we'd capture somebody, turn them over, and they'd let them go. I don't know if they paid them off or what they did, but
What was some of, like, the stuff they do to try to, like, sabotage your guys' like boats and
Well, they have swimmers, and swimmers that go around and put satchel charges on the ships, and they sunk, like I said, they sunk that Shell tanker out there. And they put a satchel charge on an anchor chain and blow off the anchor chain and put one on the ship, and the thing would break away, and then they'd blow up the ship in deeper water so you couldn't save it.
How'd you like defend against the swimmers?
We had hand grenades, percussion hand grenades. We used to throw about a gross of them in the water every day. We'd go around all the different ships and the docks and the piers and
Would you just toss them at random?
just toss them randomly. You didn't want to do it all the time at the same time. You threw them randomly because they would time you. You know, they could time you and say, well, they're not going to throw them between 10 and 11.
Yeah.
And at night, we used to make, we had curfews. For anybody that had a boat, there was a curfew in the harbor, and after it got dark, if you were a fisherman, there was a lot of fishermen, they had these round baskets, and they had one oar, and they could make that round basket go straight. I could never figure out how they did that, but those guys had to get their nets out and set up wherever they want to set up for the night, because nobody could move in the harbor at night. We just patrolled the harbor, made sure nobody moved. If we saw anything moving, we went after them.
what were your like you guys have any bathrooms or anything?
We had one 3-hole outhouse, and it was nothing but an enclosure with a piece of plywood with holes cut in it, and stuff fell down into half of a 55-gallon drum that had diesel fuel in it. And the lowest rated man got to clean those things out. He'd pull that one out and put another one in, and he'd set that one on fire and burn it up. And that was our sanitary conditions. And then we got a bad case of water one month, and for 30 days everybody had dysentery. We had to build another 6-hole real fast.
Jeez.
I don't know if you know what dysentery is, but that's a really bad case of diarrhea.
So how would you guys get like water and food and stuff?
We took water out with us in the boat, and we had a cooler, you know, and every day the boat officer on the way out would check the cooler, make sure we didn't have anything we shouldn't have in there. And we'd go out on patrol, we'd bring our own water out, and we had cases of sea rats. Sea rats are government-issued food that comes in different sized green cans, and it comes with a little P38, which is a can opener that you use to open it up. And the date on the boxes, I won't forget, was 1942 when they were manufactured. This was 1966, we were eating them. So you got to make sure the cans weren't puffed up. If they were puffed up, you threw them away. And we used to warm them up by sticking them on the engine manifold.
Jeez.
Crack the can open, put it on the manifold, leave it on there for about an hour.
Well, at least it was warm.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Sometimes whatever we had, if it was in a bottle and it was too hot out, it was 120 degrees there all the time. It got cold during the monsoon season, it would drop down to about 80 or 90 degrees.
Like, when's the monsoon season?
And I don't really remember the months, but I can tell you it rains like you've never seen rain before.
It's crazy. Like, worse than a hurricane?
It's a hurricane without the wind, a little bit of wind, but a lot more rain. Tons of rain. It's like turning a faucet on.
Like, where were you when the war was coming to an end and everything?
I left there in 1967, and I went on a destroyer in Long Beach for a little while, and then from that destroyer I went to I re-enlisted in the Navy for 6 more years, and then I went on to shore duty in Hawaii for 3 years, where I was chief of water transportation, acting chief of water transportation, Fort Island. It was my job we had 3 car ferries. It was my job to make sure they stayed on schedule and they stayed fixed. My job was to fix them when they broke down. I was also responsible for raising the flag on the Arizona Memorial every day. I didn't have to do it. There was a patrol boat that did it, but if it didn't go up on time, my phone rang from the captain of the naval base, and I got my talking for the day.
So you were like the backup for the person if they didn't raise the flag.
No, I was in charge of the guy who's supposed to raise the flag. Things roll downhill, you know. If I got my butt chewed out, it just went right down the hill. It was never off more than maybe a minute, so
That's
it's
always
usually
good.
pretty good.
Yeah, that's
But
good.
the ferries did break down at the worst times, and they had to be fixed, and they ran on a schedule. They had to be where they had to be on time. So if one broke down, it was serious. You had to have another one started up and underway and back on track while you tied up the other one.
When you came back from like the war and everything, like how did everybody treat you guys, soldiers?
It wasn't pretty. My family treated me well. They gave me a nice party when I came back. I had a good coming back that way. But as far as people in general outside the bases, and you couldn't wear your uniform because people would throw stuff at you and spit at you and
Wow.
call you names, call you baby killers, stuff they really had no clue about because the media gave them all this bad news, all this bum rap that we were getting. And I mean, we used to go over there and play with the kids. I used to go in the back alleys and play cards. I didn't know what I was doing, but the kids used to tell me what I was doing. And I'd play cards with the elderlies in the back. And when the card game was over and I won all the money, I'd give it back to them, you know. So it's goodwill, you know.
Yeah.
But you make everybody happy. It's just like when we were building the buildings and we'd fill up a 2.5-ton truck with scraps that we weren't going to use anymore. We'd take it down the middle of the town and jump out, and all the people would jump in and take all the scraps out and go build a house or something with it. Amazing what they can do.
Now, what were some of their houses made out of?
The houses were made out of tin and cardboard, and I don't know where they got them from, but there's sheets of Coca-Cola cans and Pepsi-Cola cans and beer cans before they're cut into cans. I don't know how they ever got them, but that's what they had them, and that's what the houses were made out of. Dirt floors.
See,
Some of the buildings, some people had buildings, but they were just cement block. Nothing in them, one room, cement block with a tin roof. Their plumbing was just a little river that ran down out in front of their house or in back of their house or whatever. And all the waste went down the little river into the bay.
yeah.
That's lovely.
Yeah, well, it wasn't pretty.
Do you ever win any medals or
I got a few.
awards? What were they?
I knew you were going to ask me that, but I have two good conduct ribbons. I have 2 honorable discharge ribbons. I have 1 Vietnamese service ribbon, National Defense ribbon, qualification ribbon from Camp Pendleton. These are Vietnam service medals. One is a National Defense Medal. This is 2 campaigns, Vietnam. I think that's about it. I can't remember them all. Got to write them down nowadays, can't remember them all.
Which one is the like best one that you've earned?
Most proud of?
Service, military service to the United States. I love being in the Navy. I would have stayed for 20 years, but I had a wife and 3 boys, and I was looking at 10 years sea time. My wife said it's me or the sea, so I got out. It wasn't too bad. I became a chief engineer on a tugboat for 30 years.
It's good. Like, how did you readjust to?
Coming back?
Yeah.
Well, when I came back from Vietnam, I stayed in the Navy, and I was treated very well. I was respected by my peers because I was a Vietnam veteran, and, you know, you kind of looked up to a little bit. I was given, when I went to Pearl Harbor, that's when they gave me my unit meritorious accommodation, and I got another accommodation, and they had a big deal on the front lawn in front of the captain of the naval base there in Pearl Harbor. So that was kind of nice, you know. It's as long as you stayed within your peers and you didn't get outside, you were okay. You know, everything was good. Because when you went outside, you had to wear civilian clothes. They could tell you were in the service by your haircut, but back then everybody had long hair and beards.
Hippies.
Huh?
Hippies.
Well, I don't really want to call them all hippies. That's another stereotype. That
Well,
was San Francisco.
how did you like get back home?
How'd I get home?
Yeah.
On a great big jet. Flew into Seattle. It was a big, it was a 747. I flew from Cam Bay, Vietnam. I took a patrol boat from Nha Trang down to Cam Bay. From Cam Bay, I flew to Seattle, Washington. From Seattle, Washington, I flew to Indianapolis. From Indianapolis, I flew to Kennedy. And by then, I was in civilian clothes, so it was good.
Is there any stories you'd like wanna
Remember?
remember
Any
specifically?
Just
I got a lot of stories about what?
Um,
the
Anything
most
favorite
memorable.
stories?
About Vietnam?
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, not really. Can't think of anything. I didn't like it there, I'll tell you that. So I really didn't have too many favorites. I do have one story, yeah, actually. My friend Larry, this is how I found out he was on my boat. I said, you have to tell me something that only you, me, and God knows about that boat. There's one thing that happened on that boat that nobody else would know about except you and me. The two crews, anyway. He says, well, I was at the helm when the engine blew up. I said, you're the son of a gun that blew up my engine? And that's how I knew he was on the same boat. So I had to take the boat down to Cam Bay, and they put it up on a big cement pier, and we had to pull the engine out and put another engine in. They blew a big hole in the side of it. Well, he didn't, it just happened. But while we were there and we had the engine out, we went up the street. The Cam Bay was totally different from the Trang. They had a package store, and they had paved roads and running water and toilets, and these are like commodities we never thought we'd ever see again, you know. So we went and got a couple of cases of beer, brought them back to the boat. We only had water on the boat. So we would drink the beer, and then we'd fill the cans full of water and then throw them over the side. You know, it's not like today with ecology and everything. It was totally different.
Yeah.
Well, now the next morning we're all hungover, and we're all sound asleep. And we hear somebody beating on the side of the boat, and I come out and I look, and there's every officer on the base standing out there. They were doing a base inspection, and the captain of the base was out there. And he goes, I'll be back in 20 minutes. You got 20 minutes to get those stars out of the water. They were gleaming like stars in the bottom of the water. And we all had to dive down 12 feet with hangovers to get all those beer cans out of there. That's about the funniest story I can think of there.
Like, was it hard diving down there? And
The water was as clear as tap water. So the cans really showed up with the sun shining on them. So to dive down there with a hangover, yeah, I'd say it was tough. First of all, your head's going like this. Then you got to dive down 12 feet. Now it's going like this. And the rest of the time in the service, after I left Nam, I told you I went on a destroyer. I was on a DE. I was shore duty in Pearl Harbor, and my last ship was an LSD out of Long Beach, California, which got switched to San Diego. And one of the reasons I got out is because that ship was going back to Vietnam. And my time was up. I had 3 months to go. I put in for a 3-month cut, and they gave me a 3-month cut, and I got out. Because I didn't want to go back there. I figured I was lucky the first time I got there. I don't know how long my Irish luck would hang out.
How'd they transport you around, like, from the U.S. to Vietnam?
Well, I went by train from Long Island, or from Grand Central Station. I went by train to Los Angeles because there was an airplane strike in 1966. And there was no flying, so I had to take a train. It took 5 days to get to Los Angeles. And that was sitting in a chair. That wasn't laying in a berth or anything like that. And then from there, we did our training, Camp Pendleton and Long Beach. They woke us up in the middle of the night, told us to pack our stuff up, we're leaving. Took us to this little airport in Alameda, put us on a B-25, which is a little 2-engine prop yacht. I don't know if you've ever seen the commercial on TV with Humphrey Bogart where what's a nice girl like you doing in a place like this kind of advertisement, a little old airplane. You might have seen one at the air show if you went to the air show.
Yeah, I went to that.
Twin engine prop job, military job. And we took off and we flew to Hawaii on that. We landed in Barbers Point, Hawaii. Got out of that plane, and there was no seats in these planes. You sat on your sea bags and you sat on the boxes of ammunitions and guns and everything. We were like being smuggled out of the country practically. We landed in Hawaii. We had to take all the stuff out of one plane, put it in the other plane, same exact kind of plane. Get in that plane, and then we flew to and stopped at every island between Hawaii and Vietnam except Johnson Island, because it had high tide. Johnson Island's underwater. But we got fuel at every little spot you go to. We landed in the Philippines. We take off again, and I look out the window and I see smoke coming out of one of the engines, and I told the guy about it. We turned around, went back to the Philippines. They had to keep us there for 3 days while they went back to the States to get a starter for that boat. The starter went on fire. For that plane, the starter went on fire. Then we took off and went and landed in Cameron Bay. We get to Cameron Bay, and there's absolutely nothing there except green tents, brown dirt, lots of dust, green trucks with black tires. That's basically the whole color scheme. Everybody's dressed in green, you know, or green and black cameo type stuff. And we're wearing winter Marine Corps greens. That's what they issued us. So it's like 120 degrees out. We land there, we're sweating. These greens are getting darker and darker all the time. They're light green, they're getting darker and darker and darker from the sweat. They finally tell us to get on this other plane, a C-130, and that's the one that the back door opens up. You see them bringing tractors and tanks and stuff on. Prop job, we take off. They said, okay, we're going straight up. We're going over the mountains, we're coming straight down, but we're not stopping. We're gonna hit the airstrip. We're gonna be doing about 6-8 miles an hour. We're gonna open the back door. You guys take your gear, throw it out, and jump out behind it, and don't forget to bend your legs so you don't damage your knees. So we do that. I stand up and brush myself off, and I'm looking at my name tag, and it goes U.S. Navy, MEEHAN. I'm going, I thought I joined the Navy, you know, but I don't see any water. I see nothing but dirt. And this looks like the same place we just left. Is this a joke? It did. It looked exactly like it. And we were told to go wait off on the side. And we waited off on the side, and this big 2.5-ton truck comes flying down through the dust and the dirt. Asked us if we were who we were. We said, yeah. They said, get in, stay down. We're going through some VC country. We don't want anybody to get killed. And we're green, right? We're the new guys. We don't know anything what's going on. So they fly down this road. They must be doing 50 miles an hour, but over there, that's like 120. And they're flying down, chasing people off the road, blowing the horn. There's a guy standing up there with a .30 caliber machine gun. I'm trying to see out the front window, and I see a big tree line coming up, and this guy's not slowing down. And he keeps going. He's not slowing down at all. He gets up to this tree line, goes right through it. There was a road, there was a little opening there, you just couldn't see it. Makes a hard left and a hard right and goes up the hill and stops on this big dirt platform area. Okay, everybody out, this is it, this is where you're staying. There was nothing there. That's the place we had to build. So they just checked us all in, put us all back in the truck, and took us down to the Army. And had to stay in the Army tents down there. Yeah, but transportation wasn't the top priority. It was getting you there. Now here's another thing. I'm standing there and I'm going, 2 months ago I was on an aircraft carrier in Quonset Point, Rhode Island. Now I'm on the other side of the world and I don't know where I am. All I know is I'm still in the Navy somehow. And that's the way it works. That's what you do when you join the service. You know, you say you go and you do whatever they tell you to do, and you do it.
Yeah.
And most things I ever did, I was fortunate that I did them well enough. I got some kind of accommodation for them. I was on the Armed Forces Police for a while too, in Hawaii. I got an accommodation for that.
What was your longest flight to get to Vietnam?
To get to Vietnam from Hawaii to the Philippines. No, maybe from the Philippines to Vietnam. I really don't know what the distance is, but those are pretty long. Those were in those little planes.
Yeah.
And on the way back was the longest flight. We took a 747 out of Cameron Bay right into Tacoma, Washington. We stopped, I think, in Alaska for fuel.
Wow.
So that wasn't too bad.
Is there any like,
Anything else you'd like to add?
yeah,
Well, I'd just like to tell you about the museum in Fort Pierce. It's, you guys are welcome to go up there. I have some passes for you if you want to go up there and look at the UDTC Museum in Fort Pierce on A1A. And you can see the patrol boat I was on, type of patrol boat I was on, and maybe you get a better understanding of what it's like to live on a 36-foot patrol boat for a year. Well, half the year I was there, half the year I was in the barracks or whatever.
yeah,
But when I wasn't working on the boat and I wasn't in my bunk, I would be down at the dock working on somebody else's boat. We also had 45-foot picket boats. They were made out of wood, and they had, they were World War II boats, and they had twin turret mount 50 caliber machine guns. They could spin almost 360 degrees around. I don't know if they could do 360, but I know they had a good turning radius. And we got those later on. And I put one of those in commission just before I left. If you want to go into service, join the Navy.